The sink was mocking me at midnight. Water dripped with the persistence of a Chinese torture device, each drop echoing through our pristine kitchen like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't name yet. I lay on my back under the cabinet, wrench in hand, listening to Mira pace upstairs. "Hale, are you still down there?" Her voice carried that edge I'd been hearing more often lately, impatience wrapped in false concern. "Just finishing up," I called back, tightening the connection one more turn. The dripping stopped. Small victories. I'm Hale Trenwick, 47 years old, owner of Trenwick Home Solutions. I fix things for a living. Broken pipes, cracked foundations, rotting decks. 23 years of marriage taught me that some things can't be fixed, but I hadn't learned that lesson yet. Mira stood in the doorway when I emerged, holding a black dress against her body. The fabric shimmered under the kitchen lights, expensive and elegant. She looked beautiful, as always, but something in her expression felt distant. "How do I look?" she asked, though she was already studying herself in the dark window's reflection. "Like you're going somewhere important." "It's just the reunion, Hale. 25 years. She said it like I should understand the significance, like 25 years meant something more than just time passing. Right, the reunion. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, watching her adjust the dress's neckline. "You seem excited." Her laugh sounded forced. "It's nostalgia, I suppose, seeing everyone again, remembering who we used to be." Who we used to be? The phrase stuck like a splinter. I'd been exactly who I was for decades, steady, reliable, present. But Mira had been changing, becoming someone I didn't quite recognize. "Need a ride?" I offered, though I knew the answer. "Tina's picking me up. You know how these things are. Lots of girl talk, catching up on gossip." She disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with the fixed sink and a growing unease I couldn't shake. An hour later, Tina Bell arrived in her white BMW, honking twice like we lived in a college dorm. Tina had been Mira's best friend since high school, and she'd never quite forgiven me for marrying her. She treated me like furniture, useful but unremarkable. Mira kissed my cheek before leaving, her perfume lingering in the air. "Don't wait up. These things tend to run late." I watched through the window as they drove away, Tina gesturing wildly about something while Mira nodded and laughed. The house felt empty without her energy, but also peaceful in a way that troubled me. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor Lydia. "Saw Mira leave. She looked stunning. Big night ahead?" Lydia Chen lived next door with her husband and 2 cats. She worked from home doing graphic design and had an unfortunate habit of noticing everything that happened on our street. Most of the time, her observations were harmless neighborhood gossip. Tonight, they felt different. I settled into my workshop in the garage, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects. This was my sanctuary, the place where problems had solutions and effort produced results. I was refinishing an antique dresser for a client when my phone rang. "Hale, you busy?" Nick Rourke's voice carried the gravelly tone of someone who'd spent 20 years as a Boston cop before starting his own security consulting business. "Just working. What's up?" "Jennifer dragged me to some charity thing downtown. Boring as watching paint dry. How's your Saturday night?" "Mira's at her high school reunion. I'm playing Bachelor for the evening." 25 years, huh? That's the dangerous one." "Dangerous how?" Nick chuckled, but it wasn't entirely humorous. "That's when people start wondering about the road not taken. All those old flames looking successful and mysterious. Memory has a way of editing out the bad parts." His words settled uncomfortably in my chest. "Mira's not like that." "Course not. Just saying, reunions make people stupid sometimes. Temporarily stupid usually, but stupid nonetheless." After we hung up, I tried to focus on the dresser, but Nick's comment kept circling back. Mira had been different lately, distracted, secretive, spending more time on her phone. I'd attributed it to work stress. She was a partner at Callan and Associates, specializing in corporate law. The hours were demanding, the clients difficult. But now I wondered if there was something else. At 11:30, I gave up on the dresser and went inside. The house felt too quiet, too empty. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the living room, trying to read, but mostly just listening for car doors. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lydia, but this one included a photo. The image showed Mira and a tall man with silver hair standing close together outside the Riverside Country Club. Very close. His hand rested on her lower back, and she was looking up at him with an expression I hadn't seen in years, bright, animated, alive. The caption read, "Your wife's got moves. This guy's been all over her for an hour." I stared at the photo until my eyes burned. The man looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Handsome in that aging athlete way, expensive suit, confident posture. The kind of guy who'd never spent a Saturday night fixing a leaky sink. Mira's face in the photo was radiant. She looked like the woman I'd married, the one who used to laugh at my jokes and steal bites of my dessert. When was the last time she'd looked at me like that? I poured another whiskey and waited. She came home at 2:15, moving quietly through the house like she was trying not to wake me, but I was sitting in the dark living room and she couldn't see me when she passed the doorway. "Hale?" she called softly. I didn't answer. I watched her climb the stairs, heard the shower run for 20 minutes, listened to her get into bed. She was humming something under her breath, a song I didn't recognize. The next morning, she was already dressed when I came downstairs. Professional attire, even though it was Sunday. "Morning," she said without looking up from her phone. "Coffee's fresh." "How was the reunion?" "Oh, you know, same old people, same old stories, everyone trying to prove how successful they've become." She scrolled through her messages with unusual intensity. "Anyone interesting show up?" Her fingers paused for just a moment. "The usual crowd, a few people I hadn't seen in decades." I waited, but she didn't elaborate. The silence stretched between us like a wire under tension. "I'm meeting Tina for brunch," she said finally. "Girl talk, you know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. Mira and I used to have Sunday mornings together. Coffee, newspapers, lazy conversations about nothing important. When had that stopped? After she left, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I looked up Mira's high school graduating class online. The Riverside High School class of 1999 had an active Facebook page filled with reunion photos and nostalgic comments. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Colby Varon. That was the man in Lydia's photo. According to his profile, he was a real estate developer based in Cambridge, divorced, no children. His photos showed expensive cars, exotic vacations, and the kind of lifestyle that screamed, "Look at me!" But it was the comments on the reunion photos that made my stomach drop. Dozens of people mentioning Mira and Colby, talking about high school sweethearts reunited, making jokes about what might have been. I scrolled through old yearbook photos posted by classmates. There they were, 18-year-old Mira and Colby, crowned homecoming king and queen, looking at each other like they were the center of the universe. My phone buzzed. A text from Mira. "Brunch running long. Don't wait for me for dinner." I stared at the message, then at the reunion photos, then back at the message. For the first time in 23 years of marriage, I wondered if my wife was lying to me. The thought should have been shocking, but instead it felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. All those late nights, the distracted conversations, the way she'd started dressing differently, not for me, but like she was preparing for something. I closed the laptop and went to the garage. The antique dresser waited, half-finished, patient, but my hands were shaking too much to hold the sandpaper steady. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray October drizzle that makes everything look dirty. I was replacing a client's front steps in Brookline when my phone rang. Dawn Summers, my office manager, sounded excited. "Hale, you need to get down here. I've got gossip that'll curl your toes." Dawn had worked for me for 8 years. She was 62, twice divorced, and had an uncanny ability to extract information from people. Contractors, suppliers, clients, everyone ended up telling Dawn their life stories. "I'm covered in sawdust, Dawn. Can it wait?" "Trust me, you want to hear this now." 20 minutes later, I sat in my office while Dawn poured coffee and arranged herself like she was about to deliver a performance. "So I'm at Starbucks this morning, right? The one on Newberry Street. And who walks in but your lovely wife and that bellwoman, deep in conversation?" My stomach tightened. "And?" "Well, they didn't see me. I was in the corner with my laptop. But honey, they were not discussing legal briefs. Mira was showing Tina photos on her phone, all giggly like a teenager. And Tina kept saying things like, 'He looks exactly the same, and I can't believe you found him again.'" Dawn paused for dramatic effect, sipping her coffee. "Found who again?" That's what I wanted to know. So I maybe accidentally walked past their table on my way to the bathroom. Got a glimpse of the photos. Tall guy, silver hair, expensive suit. Ring any bells? It rang all of them. "What else did you hear?" Tina was pushing hard, talking about second chances and what you really deserve. "Your wife seemed torn, kept mentioning you, but not in a good way. More like you were an obstacle to something." The coffee tasted bitter. Obstacle to what? That's when it got interesting. Mira said, and I quote, "Colby says he never got over me, says I was the one that got away." There it was. Colby Varon, high school sweetheart, real estate developer, destroyer of marriages. "Dawn, I need you to do me a favor. Cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. Hale, honey, what are you planning? Research. I spent the afternoon learning everything I could about Colby Varon. Public records, business filings, social media, local newspaper articles. The picture that emerged wasn't flattering. Varon Development had a reputation for cutting corners and leaving messes for others to clean up. 3 lawsuits in the past 5 years, 2 settled out of court. His divorce from Patricia Varon in 2018 had been messy. Allegations of infidelity, hidden assets, and emotional manipulation. But what really caught my attention was a quote from Patricia in a Boston Globe article about their custody battle. Colby is charming for exactly as long as it takes to get what he wants. Then you realize you're just another acquisition. I was still reading when my phone buzzed. A text from Mira. Working late tonight? Don't wait up. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. I called Nick Rourke. I need a favor, I said when he answered. What kind of favor? The kind you might not want to do. Nick was quiet for a moment. Meet me at Murphy's in an hour. Murphy's Pub was the kind of place where cops and ex-cops went to drink beer and complain about the world. Nick was already there when I arrived, occupying a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting. I think Mira's having an affair. Nick didn't seem surprised. Evidence or suspicion? I told him everything, the reunion, the photos, Colby Varon, Dawn's coffee shop intelligence. Nick listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. So what do you want from me? He asked when I finished. Help me find out for sure. Hale, you don't want to go down this road. Trust me, I've seen what happens when people start investigating their spouses. I need to know. Nick studied my face for a long moment. All right, but we do this smart, and we do it legal. No breaking and entering, no hacking, no stalking. Just good old-fashioned surveillance and public records. Agreed. First rule, document everything. Photos, times, locations. If this goes south, you'll need evidence for lawyers. It won't come to that. Nick's laugh was bitter. That's what they all say. We spent an hour planning. Nick would handle the technical aspects, GPS tracking, background checks, financial records. I would focus on behavioral changes and opportunity. One more thing, Nick said as we prepared to leave. You sure you want to know? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I thought about Mira's face in Lydia's photo, the way she'd looked at Colby Varon like he was the answer to questions she'd forgotten she was asking. I'm sure. That night, Mira came home at 11:45, smelling like expensive wine and someone else's cologne. She kissed my cheek absently and headed straight for the shower. While the water ran, I did something I'd never done before. I checked her phone. It was password protected, but I knew the code, our anniversary date. The irony wasn't lost on me. The messages to Colby Varon went back 3 weeks. Hundreds of them. They started innocent enough, reunion small talk, catching up on old times. But they escalated quickly. I keep thinking about Saturday night. You haven't changed at all. I dream about what might have been if we hadn't been so young. Hale doesn't understand me the way you do. He never did. I feel like I'm waking up after 20 years of sleepwalking. The most recent exchange made my hands shake. Colby. Leave him. You know you want to. Mira. It's not that simple. There's history, finances, complications. Colby. Life's too short for complications. I have a place in Cambridge. You could stay there while you figure things out. Mira. I need time to think. Colby. Don't think too long. Some opportunities don't come twice. I heard the shower turn off and quickly put the phone back where I'd found it. When Mira emerged from the bathroom, I was pretending to read. Good day? I asked. Long day. The Morrison case is more complicated than we thought. She slipped into bed beside me, but stayed on her side, facing away. Mira? Do you ever think about the past? About roads not taken? She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, everyone thinks about that sometimes. It's human nature. Any regrets? Another long pause. No major ones. Why? Just curious. But I was lying, and I suspected she was too. The next morning I followed her to work. Not closely. I parked across the street from her office building and waited. At lunch, she emerged with Tina Bell and walked to a nearby restaurant. Normal behavior. But at 3:30, she came out alone, got in her car, and drove toward Cambridge. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding like I was committing a crime. She parked outside a gleaming high-rise near Harvard Square, Colby Varon's building, according to the business address I'd found online. She was inside for 2 hours. When she came out, her hair was messed up and her lipstick was gone. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, checking her appearance in the rearview mirror before driving back to the office. That night, she told me she'd been in depositions all afternoon. I called Nick. "I need that GPS tracker," I said. "Hale, I need it tomorrow." Nick sighed. "This is going to end badly." It already has. The GPS tracker was smaller than a matchbox, magnetic, and according to Nick, undetectable unless someone was specifically looking for it. We attached it to Mira's car at 6 in the morning while she was in the shower. "Remember," Nick said, "this is just for your peace of mind. Don't do anything stupid with the information." But peace of mind was the last thing I felt, watching the little red dot on my phone's tracking app as Mira drove to work, then to lunch, then straight to Colby Varen's building. Again. This time she stayed for 3 hours. I was installing kitchen cabinets for a client in Newton when my phone buzzed with a text from Mira. "Girls' night with Tina. Don't wait up." According to the GPS, she was still at Colby's. I finished the cabinet installation with mechanical precision, my mind racing. 23 years of marriage, and it was ending with lies and a GPS tracker. There had to be a better way to handle this, but I couldn't think of one. At 9 o'clock, the red dot moved from Cambridge to the Riverside Country Club. I drove there and parked across the street, feeling like a private investigator in a bad movie. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see Mira and Colby at a corner table. They were holding hands across the table, leaning into each other like teenagers. Mira was laughing at something he'd said, her whole face animated in a way I hadn't seen in years. I took photos with my phone, hating myself for doing it, but unable to stop. They left the restaurant at 10:15 and walked to the parking lot together. Colby pressed Mira against her car and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. She melted into him, her arms around his neck, her body language screaming desire. More photos, more evidence, more confirmation of what I already knew but hadn't wanted to believe. Mira came home at midnight, humming that same unfamiliar song. She found me in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and my laptop. "You're up late," she said, trying to sound casual. "Couldn't sleep. How was girls' night?" "Oh, you know Tina, she always has drama to discuss." Mira opened the refrigerator and stood there for a moment, not really looking at anything. "Where did you go?" "That new wine bar on Newberry Street. Very trendy, very overpriced." I nodded and closed the laptop. "Mira, we need to talk." Something in my tone made her turn around. "About what?" "About us. About where we're going." She sat down across from me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married. Concerned, attentive, present. "Is everything okay, Hale?" "I don't know. You tell me." The silence stretched between us. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew. "I've been feeling disconnected lately," she said finally, "like we're just going through the motions." "And whose fault is that?" "It's not about fault. It's about growing apart. People change, Hale. Sometimes they change in different directions." "Is there someone else?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Mira's face went through several expressions: surprise, guilt, defiance, and finally resignation. "It's complicated." "No, it's not. It's simple. Is there someone else?" She looked down at her hands. "Yes." The word hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it. Knowing something and hearing it confirmed are two different kinds of pain. "Who? Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She was quiet for a long moment. "Colby Varen, from high school." "How long?" "Since the reunion. But Hale, it's not what you think. What do I think?" "That this is some sordid affair. It's not. Colby and I have history. Real history. We were supposed to be together, but we were too young to understand what we had." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So, this is fate? Destiny? Star-crossed lovers finally reunited?" Don't be sarcastic. Don't be naive. You're having an affair with a real estate developer who's been divorced twice and has a reputation for screwing over business partners. Mira's eyes flashed. "You've been investigating him?" "I've been trying to understand why my wife has been lying to me for weeks." "I haven't been lying." "You were at his apartment this afternoon for 3 hours. Then you had dinner with him at the country club. You kissed him in the parking lot like you were auditioning for a romance novel. But tonight you told me you were with Tina at a wine bar." The color drained from her face. "You followed me?" "I didn't have to. You're not as careful as you think." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "How did you want me to find out? Divorce papers? A note on the refrigerator? Or were you planning to just disappear one day?" I was going to tell you. I just needed time to figure out how. Time to figure out how to leave me for your high school boyfriend? She turned around, and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Coldness, calculation, the look of someone who'd already made their decision. Yes, she said. I'm leaving you, Hale. I'm sorry it happened this way, but I'm not sorry it happened. The finality in her voice was like a door slamming shut. 23 years of marriage ended with a simple declaration in our kitchen at midnight. When? Soon. I need to make arrangements, figure out the logistics. The logistics. I repeated the word like it was foreign. Is that what I am now? A logistical problem? You're making this harder than it needs to be. How hard should it be, Mira? How hard should it be for you to destroy our marriage? Our marriage was already broken. You just didn't want to see it. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been blind to the cracks in our foundation, too busy fixing other people's problems to notice my own, but that didn't make her betrayal hurt any less. I want you to leave, I said. What? Tonight. I want you to leave tonight. Hale, be reasonable. I need time to pack, to find a place. You already have a place. Colby's apartment in Cambridge. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to have you. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the reliable, predictable Hale Trenwick she'd married was finally showing some backbone. Fine, she said. I'll pack a bag. She was upstairs for an hour, moving around with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this moment for weeks. When she came down with 2 suitcases, I was still sitting at the kitchen table. I'll call you in a few days, she said. We need to discuss finances, the house, legal arrangements. Get a lawyer. Hale, get a lawyer, Mira, because I'm getting one too. She stood in the doorway for a moment, looking like she wanted to say something else. Then she picked up her suitcases and walked out of my life. I sat in the empty kitchen until dawn, listening to the house settle around me. The sink wasn't dripping anymore, but everything else was broken. 2 weeks after Mira left, I was installing a new deck for the Hendersons in Wellesley when Dawn called with news. Your wife's been busy, she said without preamble. Ex-wife, I corrected, though the divorce papers hadn't been filed yet. Whatever. She's been making the rounds, telling everyone her version of the story. I put down my hammer. What version? That you grew apart naturally, that it was mutual, that she's finally found happiness with her soulmate from high school. Dawn's voice dripped sarcasm. Very romantic, very innocent. No mention of the sneaking around or the lies. Where are you hearing this? Everywhere. The coffee shop, the grocery store, the dry cleaner. She's got Tina Bell spreading the word too. They're painting you as the boring husband who couldn't appreciate what he had. The unfairness of it hit me like a slap. Mira got to be the romantic heroine while I was cast as the obstacle to true love. There's more, Dawn continued. I heard she's been talking to some of your clients, suggesting they might want to find a more reliable contractor. My grip tightened on the phone. She's trying to sabotage my business? Looks that way. The Morrisons called this morning to cancel their bathroom renovation. Said they'd decided to go with someone else. I'd been working on the Morrison project for 3 months. The cancellation would cost me thousands in lost revenue. Dawn, I need you to do something for me. Name it. Start documenting everything. Every conversation about Mira, every canceled contract, every piece of gossip. I want dates, times, witnesses. Honey, what are you planning? I'm planning to stop being the victim in this story. That evening, I met Nick at Murphy's pub. He took one look at my face and ordered 2 whiskeys without asking what I wanted. She's trying to destroy my reputation, I said, filling him in on Dawn's intelligence. Standard scorched earth tactics. Make you the bad guy so she looks justified. Can I stop her? Legally? Slander's hard to prove unless she's making specific false statements. Saying you're boring isn't actionable, even if it hurts your business. I drank the whiskey in one swallow. So I'm supposed to just take it? Nick was quiet for a moment, studying his glass. You know, in 20 years of police work, I learned something about justice. Sometimes the system provides it, and sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't, people find other ways. What kind of other ways? The kind that require careful planning and perfect execution. The kind that leave no fingerprints but maximum impact. Are you suggesting... I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that people who destroy other people's lives sometimes find their own lives getting complicated in return. I understood what he wasn't saying. Hypothetically, what would that look like? Nick smiled for the first time all evening. Hypothetically, it would look like giving them exactly what they deserve, when they least expect it, in the most public way possible. And hypothetically, how would someone go about that? Very carefully, with lots of research, and with friends who have useful skills. We spent the next hour discussing hypothetical scenarios. By the time I went home, I had the beginnings of a plan. The first step was intelligence gathering. I needed to understand Mira and Colby's routines, their vulnerabilities, their pressure points. Nick handled the technical aspects, enhanced GPS tracking, financial background checks, social media monitoring. What we discovered was illuminating. Colby Varon was in financial trouble. His last 3 development projects had gone over budget and behind schedule. He was leveraging properties to pay for other properties, a house of cards that could collapse with the right pressure. More interesting was his pattern with women. According to Nick's research, Colby had a history of pursuing married women, particularly successful ones with assets. His first wife had been a doctor, his second a corporate lawyer. Both divorces had left him significantly wealthier. He's a predator, Nick explained over coffee at my office. He targets women who are bored with their marriages, makes them feel special, then moves in for the financial benefit. So Mira's just another mark? Looks that way, though she might not realize it yet. I thought about Mira's excitement, the way she'd looked at Colby like he was her salvation. She had no idea she was being hunted. What about her? I asked. Nick consulted his notes. She's been busy. Opened a new checking account, started moving money around. She's also been meeting with divorce attorneys. Which ones? 3 different firms. She's shopping for the most aggressive representation she can find. The betrayal cut deep. While I was still processing the end of our marriage, Mira was already planning to take me apart financially. There's something else, Nick said. She's been telling people you were abusive. Emotionally, not physically, but still damaging to your reputation. I set down my coffee cup carefully, afraid I might throw it. Abusive how? Controlling behavior, isolation from friends, financial manipulation, classic stuff that's hard to disprove. None of that is true. I know that. You know that. But mud sticks, especially when it's thrown by a respected attorney. The unfairness of it was overwhelming. I'd spent 23 years being a faithful husband, and now I was being painted as an abuser to justify Mira's affair. Nick, I want to destroy them. Legally? However it takes. Nick nodded slowly. Then we need to be smart about it, and we need to be patient. Good revenge is like good wine. It gets better with time. We spent the next week refining our approach. The plan had 3 phases: exposure, escalation, and devastation. Each phase would build on the previous one, creating a cascade of consequences that would leave both Mira and Colby facing the ruins of their perfect romance. Phase 1 was simple. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they'd won, that they'd successfully rewritten history to make themselves the heroes. Let them get sloppy. Phase 2 would introduce complications. Nothing illegal, nothing that could be traced back to me, but enough pressure to crack their facade. Phase 3 would be the finale, a public reckoning that would expose them for what they really were. Remember, Nick warned, once we start this, there's no going back. You sure you want to go down this road? I thought about Mira's coldness in our kitchen, the way she'd dismissed 23 years of marriage as a logistical problem. I thought about her lies to our friends and neighbors, the damage she was doing to my business and reputation. I'm sure. All right then, let's give them what they deserve. 3 weeks into Phase 1, Mira and Colby were living together openly in his Cambridge high-rise. According to the GPS tracker Nick had placed on Colby's Porsche, they'd settled into a routine: expensive dinners, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, shopping excursions that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. They looked happy in the photos Lydia kept sending me. Disgustingly, publicly happy. They're getting careless, Nick reported during our weekly strategy meeting at Murphy's. Colby's been flashing cash he doesn't have, and Mira's been talking about their engagement to anyone who'll listen. Engagement? Unofficial, but she's already looking at venues. Seems she wants to marry him as soon as your divorce is final. The irony was perfect. Mira was so eager to start her new life that she hadn't bothered to investigate the man she was planning to marry. Time for Phase 2? I asked. Nick grinned. Past time. Phase 2 began with Colby's business problems. Nick had contacts in the construction industry, people who could make life difficult for a developer with questionable practices. Suddenly, Colby's permits were delayed, his inspections failed, his subcontractors found better-paying jobs elsewhere. Within a week, 2 of his projects ground to a halt. Within 2 weeks, his investors were asking uncomfortable questions. But the real masterstroke was Patricia Varon, Colby's second ex-wife. Nick found her working as a real estate agent in Brookline, bitter but professional, with intimate knowledge of Colby's methods and weaknesses. He's doing it again, she said when I met her for coffee after Nick had made the introduction. The same pattern he used on me. Charm offensive, promises of a perfect life, then the slow financial strangulation. What do you mean? Patricia stirred her latte thoughtfully. Colby doesn't have his own money. He's good at leveraging other people's assets, making them think they're investing in their future together. By the time they realize what's happening, he's got control of everything. Is that what he did to you? Among other things. I lost my house, my savings, my business. It took me 3 years to rebuild my credit after the divorce. I leaned forward. Would you be willing to share that information with Mira? Patricia's smile was sharp as a knife. I'd be delighted. The meeting was arranged through Dawn, who called Mira's office claiming to represent a potential client with questions about divorce law. Mira agreed to a consultation at a downtown coffee shop, expecting to discuss legal strategy. Instead, she found Patricia Varon waiting with a thick folder of documents. According to Dawn, who watched from across the street, the conversation lasted 20 minutes. Mira went from confident to confused to horrified as Patricia laid out Colby's history of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. She looked like someone had punched her in the stomach, Dawn reported, kept shaking her head like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. But Mira didn't leave Colby. Instead, she confronted him. We knew this because Nick had managed to place listening devices in Colby's apartment during a routine maintenance inspection. Arranged through a contact in building management, the argument was spectacular. You never told me about the lawsuits, Mira's voice crackled through Nick's surveillance equipment. Ancient history, Colby replied, his charm noticeably strained. Patricia's bitter about the divorce. She'll say anything to cause trouble. She had documentation, Colby. Court records, financial statements. You left her with nothing. I left her with what she deserved. The coldness in his voice was revealing. This was the real Colby Varon, the predator behind the romantic facade. What about your current projects? Patricia says you're leveraging properties you don't actually own. That's how development works, sweetheart. You use other people's money to create value. Other people's money? What about my money? You said you needed a short-term loan for the Somerville project. There was a long pause. That's different. How is it different? Because we're partners now. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. Except you don't have anything, do you? It's all borrowed, all leveraged, all built on other people's investments. The argument continued for another hour, growing more heated as Mira realized the extent of Colby's deception. But in the end, she stayed. Love, it seemed, was stronger than evidence. Or maybe she was just too proud to admit she'd made a mistake. Phase 2 escalated when Colby's financial problems became public knowledge. A story appeared in the Boston Business Journal detailing the delays in his projects, the investor complaints, the permit violations. The article didn't mention his personal life, but it painted a picture of a developer in serious trouble. Mira's law firm took notice. Corporate attorneys couldn't afford to be associated with financial scandals, even indirectly. According to Dawn's network of gossips, there had been a serious conversation between Mira and the senior partners about her relationship choices. She's been put on notice, Dawn reported. Clean up the mess or find another job. But instead of distancing herself from Colby, Mira doubled down. She moved more of her money into his accounts, co-signed loans for his failing projects, tied her financial future to his sinking ship. It was exactly what we'd hoped for. Time for Phase 3? Nick asked. I thought about Mira's face in that first reunion photo, the way she'd looked at Colby like he was her salvation. Now she was about to discover what salvation actually cost. Time for Phase 3. The annual Riverside Chamber of Commerce dinner was the social event of the season, where local business leaders gathered to network, donate to charity, and see who was sleeping with whom. Mira and Colby would be there. She was receiving an award for outstanding legal services, and he was sponsoring a table despite his financial problems. It was the perfect venue for a public reckoning. Nick and I spent a week preparing. We had documentation of Colby's business failures, recordings of his arguments with Mira, financial records showing how he'd manipulated her money, and testimony from Patricia Varon about his pattern of predatory behavior. But the centerpiece of our presentation was something even better, Colby's own words. The listening devices in his apartment had captured more than arguments. They'd also recorded phone conversations with other women, potential marks he was cultivating while living with Mira. 3 different women, all successful, all married, all receiving the same romantic attention that had swept Mira off her feet. You're sure about this? Nick asked as we reviewed the final preparations. Once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. I'm sure. The chamber dinner was held at the Riverside Country Club. the same place where Mira and Colby had shared their first public kiss. The irony was poetic. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Nick was already there, having entered through the service entrance with the help of a contact in hotel security. Mira and Colby made a grand entrance at 7:30, she in a shimmering gold dress, he in an expensive tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. They looked like the perfect couple, successful, attractive, radiating confidence. The award ceremony began at 8 o'clock. Mira was introduced as a pillar of the legal community and an inspiration to working women everywhere. The applause was enthusiastic as she took the podium. Her speech was polished and professional, thanking the chamber for the honor and discussing the importance of integrity in business relationships. The irony was so thick I could taste it. As she finished speaking, I stood up. "Excuse me," I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have something to add." The room went silent. Mira's face went white as she recognized my voice. "Hale," she said into the microphone, her voice shaking slightly. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to talk about integrity," I said, walking toward the front of the room, since that seems to be the theme of the evening. Security moved to intercept me, but Nick had anticipated this. The lights dimmed, and a large screen descended from the ceiling, the same screen used for the chamber's presentations. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "I'd like to share some information about tonight's award winner and her partner." The first image appeared on the screen, a photo of Mira and Colby kissing in the country club parking lot, taken the night I'd followed them. The timestamp showed it was during our marriage, weeks before she'd admitted to the affair. Gasps echoed through the room. Mira stepped back from the podium like she'd been slapped. "This is harassment," Colby shouted, standing up from his table. "Security, stop this man." But the security guards were watching the screen like everyone else, transfixed by the unfolding drama. The next slide showed financial documents, Colby's debts, his failed projects, the money he'd borrowed from Mira under false pretenses. "Colby Varon," I announced, "has a pattern of targeting successful women, seducing them away from their marriages, and then systematically draining their assets. Tonight's award winner is just his latest victim." The audio recording began playing through the room's sound system. Colby's voice, clear and unmistakable, talking to another woman about leaving her husband. "Don't worry about the money, sweetheart. Once you're free, we'll have everything we need. I've got experience helping women transition out of boring marriages." Mira's face crumpled as she recognized the voice, the casual manipulation, the same lines he'd probably used on her. The presentation continued for 10 minutes, a methodical destruction of both their reputations, backed by irrefutable evidence. Phone records, financial statements, legal documents, recorded conversations, everything laid out for the city's business elite to see and judge. When it ended, the room was silent, except for the sound of Mira crying. "The truth," I said into that silence, "is that some people will destroy anything, marriages, families, friendships, to get what they want. And sometimes the only justice is making sure everyone knows who they really are." I walked out of the country club without looking back, leaving Mira and Colby to face the wreckage of their perfect romance. The fallout was swift and brutal. By morning, the story was all over social media. Someone had recorded my presentation and posted it online, where it went viral with the hashtag Yujash Chamber Scandal. Mira's law firm fired her that afternoon. Colby's remaining investors pulled out, forcing his company into bankruptcy. The 3 women he'd been cultivating as future marks all blocked his phone number and warned their friends. But the most satisfying consequence came 3 days later, when Mira called me. "Hale," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I need to talk to you." "I'm listening." "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Colby isn't who I thought he was. No kidding. He's been using me, manipulating me. Everything Patricia said was true." I waited, but she didn't continue. "And," I prompted, "and I want to come home. I want to try to fix this, to rebuild what we had." The request hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that had already burned everything to ash. "Mira," I said finally, "do you remember what you told me the night you left? You said our marriage was already broken, that I just didn't want to see it. I was wrong. No, you were right. It was broken. But not because we grew apart, and not because I didn't appreciate you. It was broken because you chose to break it. Hale, please. You chose to lie to me for weeks. You chose to betray our marriage for a fantasy. You chose to try to destroy my reputation when I wouldn't play along with your rewritten history." She was crying now, but I felt nothing. The man who would have comforted her, who would have done anything to save their marriage, was gone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your perfect romance turned out to be a scam. You're sorry you lost your job and your reputation and your financial security. That's not, but you're not sorry you betrayed me. You're not sorry you threw away 23 years for a high school fantasy. You're just sorry it didn't work out the way you planned. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of everything that could never be repaired. Goodbye, Mira, I said. Hale, wait. But I'd already hung up. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Mira got half of what was left after legal fees, which wasn't much considering the damage to both our careers. She moved back in with her parents and took a job with a small firm in Worcester. Colby Varon disappeared from Boston entirely. Rumors placed him in Florida, starting over with a new identity and probably a new mark. I kept my business, rebuilt my reputation, and learned to sleep soundly in a quiet house. The sink never drips anymore, and when something breaks, I fix it quickly. Some people asked if I regretted the public humiliation, if I thought I'd gone too far. I didn't regret it. Not for a second. Sometimes the only justice is making sure everyone knows the truth, and sometimes the truth is enough.